Okay, I'm going to do a few of these. This is from the Finding Roots extra practice, so you can use this to help you with your study guide. I'm just going to do a couple of problems here. So the first thing we're going to do is factor the function and then set those two terms equal to 0 to find the roots. So let's just look at number 1. If I'm factoring this, what I'm looking at is the number in front of x squared 1? And the answer is no. The next question I ask is, do all three terms have a common factor? 23 is prime, so the only common factor is 1, so the answer to that is no. So then the method I'm going to employ is the A times C method, which again, this is a name that we've been calling it, but that's not what other people will refer to it as. Okay, so step 1 is I'm going to take A, which is 5, times C, which is 12. And multiply them together, and I get 60. So what I need to do is find factors of 60 that multiply to the middle term, which is 23. And so I'm seeing this right away, but you can use your calculator. If you recall, you can put in 60 divided by x into y equals, and if you go to your table, you'll get all the factors of 60. But in this case, it's going to be, oh, we froze up. Okay, factors of 60, in this case, it's going to be 20 and 3. 20 times 3 is 60, 20 plus 3 is 23. So we're going to rewrite this function by splitting up the middle term into these two factors. So I'm going to write 5x squared. Now, looking at this, 20 is going to go with the 5, and 3 is going to go with the 12, and you'll see why in just a second. Plus 20x plus 3x plus 12. So these two things are saying the same thing. Okay, we just split up the x term into 20 and 3x instead of writing 23x. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this into the first two terms and the last two terms. And I'm going to find a common factor between the first two terms, so 5x squared and 20x. And the common factor between those two is 5x. We can divide both of these by 5, and we can divide both of these by x. And in the parentheses, I'm going to put in the other factors. So 5x squared divided by 5x is just x. And 20x divided by 5x is 4, so x plus 4. And over here, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find a common factor between 3x and 12, and that would be 3. So we'll pull the 3 out, put a parentheses. 3x over 3 is just x, and 12 over 3 is 4, so x plus 4. The last step is we're going to use the distributive property and combine the things outside of the parentheses. So that's going to be down here, 5x plus 3 times x plus 4. So we just took what's outside the parentheses, put them together, and then what's inside the parentheses, we're going to multiply that by the outside. Okay. Now, because I'm finding the roots, I want to set this equal to 0. And then what we can do is we can just use the 0 product property and figure out what x would be in order for y to be 0. So we can do 5x plus 3 equals 0, and then x plus 4 equals 0. This one's easier, so I subtract 4 on both sides, and I get x is equal to negative 4. Here I'm going to subtract 3 on both sides, and I get 5x is equal to negative 3. Don't stop there. I don't care what 5x is. I want to know what x is. So then I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides, and I get x is equal to negative 3/5. So our answer is the roots are x is equal to negative 3/5 and negative 4. This is where the graph will cross the x-axis. Okay. Here's another example. If we look at number 2, so the first question I'm asking, is the number in front of x squared 1? No. Do these have a common factor? No. Is the first and last term a perfect square? In this case, the answer is yes. 16x squared is a perfect square. 25 is a perfect square. So what we can do is see if this is a perfect square trinomial. So the first step I'm going to take is I'm going to take the square root of the first and last term. So square root of 16 is 4, square root of x squared is x, the square root of 25 is 5. And then I'm going to multiply those together. So 5 times 4x gives me 20x. And then lastly, I'm going to multiply that by 2. So 2 times 20x is 40x. And what I'm looking for is this the same as the middle term? Doesn't matter if it's plus or minus, just is it the same as the middle term? And the answer is yes. So if it's the same as the middle term, and I'm talking about this right here, if it's the same as the middle term, then you have a perfect square trinomial. Go back up to these two, and your factored form is just going to be 4x and 5. So whatever the square root of the first and last term is, and then whatever the sign is here, in between the x squared and the x, is what you're going to put in your parentheses, and that's going to be squared. Now, we're trying to find the roots. So what we have to do is take 4x minus 5 and 4x minus 5 and set that equal to 0. Now, this is the same term, so we just have to do this once. We're going to set 4x minus 5 equal to 0 and solve for x. So we'll add 5 on both sides and get 4x equals 5. We'll divide by 4 on both sides, and we get x is equal to 5/4. So these are my roots right here, and that would be my answer. Okay, I'll do one more. So if you look at number 6, okay, is the number in front of x squared 1? No. Does each of the terms have a common factor? Well, the answer to that is yes. The common factor is 3, or it would be easier if you do negative 3. So if I factor out negative 3 and just divide each term by negative 3, I end up with x squared plus x plus 20, or sorry, minus 20. There we go. Okay. Am I done? Well, no. Now I have a trinomial where the number in front of x squared is 1. So all I need to do here is find factors of negative 20 that add to 1. And I'll spare you all the trial and error, because I'm kind of just seeing. Now I know that I'm going to need a positive and a negative, because a positive times a negative is going to give me a negative product. And so 5 and negative 4 multiplied to negative 20, 5 minus 4 gives me 1. So the way I can rewrite this is negative 3 times the quantity x plus 5, x minus 4. Now remember, I'm trying to find the roots, so I need to set this equal to 0. And we can use the zero product property and just set each term inside the parentheses equal to 0. So x plus 5 equals 0. So x is negative 5. And x minus 4 equals 0. X is equal to 4. So my roots are at x equals negative 5 and x equals 4.